Hi, welcome everybody. I'm here with Megan Wellerton, the founder of Life Force Wellness. I'm so excited. I really appreciate you making time today. So, hello, hello, hello.
Hi. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. So, just for the audience to get a chance to get to know you better, what I will do is read your bio and then we'll just have a chat about all the important things in life.
Sounds
So,
good.
after experiencing a burnout in the demanding oil and gas industry, Megan shifted her focus to health and wellness, discovering a passion for teaching physical well being and mental resilience. Recognizing the need for a holistic approach, she founded Life Force Wellness LLC, helping corporate leaders transform workplace cultures to prioritize employee well being. With a background in business and psychology, Megan specializes in work life balance and the seven dimensions of wellness. She holds multiple certifications in personal training, health coaching, nutrition, corporate wellness, positive psychology, stress management, and sleep and recovery coaching. So, welcome.
Yes. Thank you so much. It's a lot, right?
It's a lot.
It's been a journey for sure.
So, you and I met in Pittsburgh about, I want to say, in November of last year.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and we had an opportunity to be together at a dinner, and I feel like it was really an opportunity to connect very deeply. And you told a little bit about your story. So what I'd love for you to do is talk about a moment, and perhaps share a little bit of that journey with us, when you felt stuck, whether it was mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and what and how you shifted out of it, what you did and how you shifted out of it.
Yeah. I definitely when I was working in the oil and gas field industry. So I came out of college and lived it right outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And that was like during the height of the Marcellus shale boom. So
Mhm.
like drilling was like, and it was like the Wild West. There was not a lot
Right.
of regulation around it. It was this new technology. Everyone was buying up land, who could get the most. So it was a little crazy and chaotic. So it was nice because we were all kind of learning the industry together because this was new to the region. But it's very grueling. I left a oil and gas association that did a lot of lobbying, and so I learned a lot because I had to learn about the drilling process and how it works because we did a lot of lobbying in Harrisburg. And then I went to go work for a company that provided the housing for the guys on the drill sites. And they told me that their drill site runs 24/7. So I need to be on call 24/7, which is impossible. But I was working 60 to 100 hours a week,
Oh
male
my God.
dominated field. I will
Wow.
tell you that I loved the job. It was like running a circus. There were so many moving pieces and I'm ADHD. And so that was like exciting for me because every day I was like solving a puzzle and figuring out how to use the right people in the right places day to day. And it was constant shifting. That part of the job, while it might sound stressful, I actually really enjoyed that. I was always kept on my toes. What I didn't enjoy is that it was male dominated field. Women were not as well respected, were definitely underpaid. And just the mentality. It was a very toxic work environment. People would throw you under the bus. And so I did feel stuck because there was a group of people there that I also really enjoyed working with. We kind of joke we were trauma bonded together. And it was, I don't want to quit because I know you'll have to take on my responsibilities and I don't want to do that to you. And I wasn't willing to look anywhere else. I wasn't willing to, find another solution. I just kind of almost accepted this is just it. Like, this is the oil and gas field. This is how life is. I'm getting paid decently. I enjoy the work. I have a good group of people that I'm working with, but there was a lot of other issues boiling under the surface. And for me, I didn't make the decision to get unstuck. I was forced. Basically, a situation came up in the office and I was booted out, and I had a nice severance package. We left amicably. I stayed on and did some consulting work for them, but I was no longer an employee. And that really forced me to step back and go, what am I doing with my life? It was in that time that I realized like I felt like a stranger in my own home. My husband and I had kind of become estranged because I was working so much. I realized my health was deteriorating. I didn't really know even what friends to call because I had become so detached from my friends. And
Mm.
so that was my kind of aha wake up moment, where I realized, okay, something needs to give, something needs to change. And that's when I made the shift into the health and wellness side. And I started doing business and learning as much as I could about health and well being. And that's been the whole mission now of Life Force Wellness, is to help those individuals that are kind of in that stuck, burnout, toxic, maybe work environment, and they don't know how to break free from it.
Let's take a quick break. I want to remind you that if you're interested in learning more about neuro emotional coaching or kinesiology, if you would like to have a taste, find out what it could do for you or your business, your family, please look at the show notes. There's a link for a 30-minute free introductory meeting, and we can explore it. You can look at what is holding you back, what are your dreams, what is it that you always wanted to achieve. Don't be shy, sign up. Now, let's get back to the show. Wow, that's awesome. So, but take me back to that moment. So here you are burned out, and you're, I don't know, your husband and you are like passing ships in the night or something like that. Like, how did you come up with coaching? Did somebody tell you about it? Did somebody
So
offer
I
it?
became kind of a gym rat. I didn't have,
Okay.
like, I was sitting at home by myself. My husband was still working 9 to 5. And so I'm
Okay.
sitting in our house alone. And so I realized my health was not good. I was overweight. I have Crohn's disease, and
Mm.
that was constantly flaring up. So I was really trying to focus on my diet, my exercise. And I, funny enough, really got into competitive boxing at that
Oh,
time.
wow.
So I had a
Oh my
coworker
God.
that used to bring me to a fitness boxing class, and one of those trainers was like, "Hey, you're not half bad. You actually want to like give it a shot for real?" And I was like, "Sure."
Oh
And
my God.
I fell in love with it. And so I became a gym
Mhm.
rat, and I started competing in boxing, and so that kind of became my job.
Oh,
And
wow.
I had phenomenal coaches. So over at Mac Gym, Joe and Jane Devosovic, they own that gym. Jane really studies nutrition. She's very well versed. And Joe, he's been a power lifter and he has all these certifications in exercise science. I was just surrounded by such knowledgeable people. And they actually came to me and they're like, "So your severance package is about to expire. You got to go back to work. What are you going to do?" And I went, "I'm not going back to that. How do I like, how do I spend more time here doing what I love?
Mm.
And I want to make a difference." Because I mean, I lost the weight. My Crohn's finally went into remission. I developed some new friendships with people at the gym. My husband and I, obviously, we reconnected. We started working out and going on walks together and rekindled our
Awesome.
relationship. So it was just, it was so transformational, that period where I was just looking for somebody to connect with, and I found it at the gym. And so they kind of helped mentor me and guide me to get my personal training certification. And that just kind of evolved over the years. So, I mean, over the years, you rattled off all the other certifications I've gotten since then. And it was just in helping clients and going, where do they need the gaps? Because it's like I started as a personal trainer, but then you get asked, like, "Oh, what diet's best? Should I eat carbs? Should I?" So that's like, "Oh, go get the nutrition certification." And then it's, "I'm having a hard time with this. Get the health coaching certification." And I will say I almost went back into my old habits of burnout, where I had to take another pause and go, "Okay, what am I really doing with all of this?" But yeah, in that period, I think the biggest thing for me was having the support, having the person ask the question, like, "Hey, what are you going to do?" Like, you can't just live this gym rat life forever. Severance is running out, unemployment's running out. What are you going to do? And it making me reflect and really answer that question is really what drew that aha, that spark out of me.
Oh, that's a awesome story. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Can we talk about boxing for a moment? So
Yeah.
yesterday I was driving home and I was talking to a colleague of mine, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" We hadn't talked for a long time. And she's like, "I started boxing." And I'm like, "What?" So, and she was telling me how wonderful it was that when she left, when she would go home and she'd leave the gym, she felt invigorated. And I was asking her, "So is it like you're getting a lot of aggression out?" And she's like, "No, it's not about, for me, it's not about aggression. I just feel like I'm alive."
Mm.
So what was it for you? Like, do you still box?
I'll move around every now and again. I'm now considered a master, which is the polite way of saying too old to keep doing this.
Okay.
But I train young kids still that are fighting. I still jump in. I'll spar every now and again. I definitely still keep up with that workout routine.
Okay.
Um, yeah, for me, great community. I started boxing with a group of women, and I have to say, it was a little different because it's so weird because one minute we're sitting outside the boxing ring and we're sharing recipes with each other like, oh, I found these new protein bars that you can make at home, and then like 2 minutes later you're in the ring trying to like punch each other's heads off. And it's
Mm.
and you think like, oh, that must be so aggressive, and it's like, but it's not. It is a sport. There are rules, which is what I loved about boxing, is that there are rules to it. There is certain etiquettes to it. There is a level of sportsmanship. Like, yeah, I want to win, and that involves punching my friend, but at the same time, it's not done with this. I never was super aggressive. It was actually funny. My coach would tell you that it wasn't until I get hit really hard that all of a sudden I would click on. I would kind of match my opponent that, if they were not as skilled or they weren't going as hard, I'd kind of match that energy. And it takes a certain level of control. And what I loved about boxing is one, it's a full body workout. I mean, you're moving, you're punching, you're blocking. It's a full body workout. You have to be a little more strategic, even though there's that Mike Tyson's quote, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. You still go in with a plan. There is certain combos and strategy that you have. Um, so you have to be a little strategic, and you have to, I think, also show a level of control. And I think that was something that really helped teach me, was that I'm a person that always dealt in extremes. So, all or nothing, extremely aggressive or extremely passive. But boxing, was that middle ground where I could be a little aggressive, but I could still showcase that control. And so I loved every facet of boxing. I did. There were days, trust me, that I went and hit that heavy bag when we had tough days. Get that frustration out on a heavy bag. But there was always a lot of respect, for everyone I ever worked with and sparred with. There was a lot of respect for each other. We watched out for each other. We wanted to improve, which means we had to push each other. And so I think in that time in my life, that's exactly what I needed. Like, I didn't have the confidence to step away from the oil and gas field industry. I didn't have the confidence to maybe switch into a new industry. I needed someone that would push me and challenge me. And I think it was in the ring, overcoming all those challenges, that I now took that outside the ring and apply that to my regular life.
Mhm. That's awesome. Yeah. Do you think, I work a lot with the subconscious and the unconscious. And, oftentimes when I can assist my clients to really identify what's holding them back deep down, whether it's in life or in business, do you think that um, your negative beliefs were supporting you? I mean, obviously negative beliefs will hold you back, but that there were other beliefs that would support you in moving forward. But like, what's your take on all of that?
Yeah, I definitely think, especially like, I mean, I came from a very male dominated oil and gas field industry into boxing. Most of my sparring partners were men. And I do
Okay.
think that on a subconscious level, there was some of me building up, overcoming a fear of speaking
Okay.
out, speaking my voice, not being as passive, standing up for myself. And I think building those relationships and being able to like, hey, like, I won that round against a male opponent, I think helped in some degree. I mean, you can have that analogy. And I also think that there was a lot of fear. And like I said, I definitely had a lot of self-confidence issues. Stepping out on your own, starting a business for anyone, no matter what that business is, I will say a lot of my fears were always around financial too. And that
Okay.
was some of my upbringing. And so the not having a steady paycheck and can I do this? And because I lack the self-confidence, I wasn't willing to step out. But I do think that, boxing and having that support system that kept pushing me and showing me, and it was that baby step. Like, as you overcome one obstacle, and I teach like a lot on growth mindset, as you start to overcome those obstacles and come over, some of those setbacks that you've built up in your mind, or some of those thought process and those beliefs, and you're able to break that belief and see like, oh, that totally wasn't true, and look at it from another direction, it really helped me. I will say that I was definitely someone stuck in a fixed mindset. I read Carol
Mhm.
Dweck's book and when I was, going and getting all my certifications, and it really changed the way I look at some of my beliefs. And that's not to say I don't still struggle with some, but it's definitely helped me to overcome a lot of the kind of the head trash that I had.
Mhm. Right. What a one or two key points that you took away from that book, or that you've learned how to overcome the head trash?
For me, I really enjoy reflecting on a time that, like, I was in this situation before. I'm one of
Mm.
those people that, like, something happened. So, for example, I'm now self-employed. My husband actually recently just left his full-time job. He's caught the entrepreneurial bug. And there is that moment where, like, we're making that decision and everything in me was screaming like, "No, don't do it." Like, he's the one who carries the kids' health insurance, and he's the steady paycheck, and if we lose that, and I like the spiraling into catastrophizing. And one of the things that that book taught me was to take a pause and reflect on, when's a time you were in this position before? How did you overcome it before? And even looking at, okay, listen, yeah, my business was hard, but you're starting from a better point because I've already built a great network. We've already got some good leads for you. Like, I was able to like really change that perspective. But it is catching yourself and like recognizing those negative thoughts that just kind of intrude, and pausing and going, no, what here is actually based in fact and truth, and what is here is just lies, and doubt creeping in. And I think that really has helped me in my own personal journey.
Awesome. Yeah. Like to make the shift or the differentiation between, this is a story that I'm telling myself, and it's not really rooted in reality. And even if it is, how can I rewrite the story? And what
Mhm.
do I need to do so that I can, catapult myself out and into a different direction?
Yeah. And
So,
that's been helpful in so many areas, and not even just Carol Dweck's work, but I went down that rabbit hole with all the visualization and the
mm,
meditations, and like taking even those moments when I'd enter the boxing ring. My mentality used to be, this is about to be the worst 6 minutes of my life because it's hard. It doesn't sound like a lot, but those fights are hard. To taking time before I enter the ring to even visualize the fight.
mm,
Once you've had a couple and you get the feel for it, you kind of can visualize yourself. Okay, here's what's going to happen. Here's how it's going to go, and prepare yourself better. And I do that now even with my business. I think, practicing some of those visualization things of like, okay, make sure what I'm bringing in is positive, that it's rooted in some fact, that I'm not going to be surprised by what happens. I take those moments to reflect. I think that's a huge problem, and especially something I dealt with, like I said, in oil and gas. It was moving so fast. There was always so many changes. I never took the time to pause and reflect.
so Megan, what do you do? Tell our audience what you do so they can get a better understanding of it.
Yeah, so basically just through my journey, and like I said, all the studying and what I've done, all the books I've read, I've kind of compiled all that, and now I do wellness coaching, and it's based on 7 areas of well-being. So not just the physical. I mean, certainly that's where I'm probably the most educated when it comes to nutrition, fitness, exercise, but also the mental, emotional, relational, financial. We cover 7 areas of deep health. So I coach people one on one to overcome those negative thought patterns so that they can live their best lives. I also work with companies. So my real passion, what Life Force Wellness was really born from, is going in and working with companies and having them look at wellness completely differently. So typically, when corporations think of wellness, they think of yoga workshops or a lunch and learn. I'm trying to flip that narrative and say, okay, I could come in and do a yoga class for you, or I could do a leadership workshop and teach your employees what's triggering the employees that's causing the stress. Let's get to the root cause. So I do a lot with like David Rock's SCARF model and those 5 main social stress triggers, and teaching that on a very basic level to managers so they can learn why the micromanaging is driving off their employees, or why when they don't treat their people at the status that they think they should be, that they're burning out. And so working with leaders to get to the root cause of stress, not just treating the symptoms for the employees themselves, but really coming in and creating these psychologically safe work environments, less toxic work environments, things that are going to help people grow and thrive and flourish. Those are the things that I'm really focused on when it comes to corporate wellness.
And how is it being received?
It's mixed. I think that there is definitely a shift, especially with the newer generations. I think as we see that more millennials are taking over the workforce and Gen Z, they are very attuned to wanting to have a sense of purpose and fulfillment. They value work-life balance. They are very keen to set up boundaries and say, this is when I work, this is when I don't. And so I think they are very open and receptive to this. They are very welcoming to these ideas. However, I do think that you still have some old school mentality of you put in the extra work, you go the extra mile, you have to earn your stripes kind of mentality. And they have a hard time sitting with this need for psychological safety. We kind of get the back in my day stories. But I do see that this is shifting as the baby boomers are starting to retire out. Gen Xers are a little more receptive to some of this. I am seeing this shift very positively, that we are seeing more receptiveness to the idea of coming in and creating these work cultures that promote growth.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. I would agree with you that it's a mixed bag. People are, there's still more top-down approach than I think we'd like to admit. And I don't think it matters if you're in the US or if you're in Europe or if you're wherever you are. I think maybe even might be a little bit even more challenging in the US because the labor laws are so different. It's much more, I think, challenging to be employed in the United States because it's employment at will. So you can get fired at any time with very little cost. It's hard. It's much harder in Europe. So that's awesome to hear because, as we're looking at the way neuroscience works and the way we're wired, you and I both on the same page, we know that when there's psychological safety, people are much more productive.
Mm-hmm.
Because they feel better and it's easier for them to open up and talk about their weaknesses and where they need help and all those things. So I'm glad to hear that that you have passion for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That is something I've been really teaching on, that in even just mental health in the workplace. I mean, we're meeting here, it's May, and May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so there's been a lot of workshops and talking on mental health in the workplace. But, really my mission is hey, let's not just focus on this in May. This should really be a year-round thing, especially as we see that the suicide rates of our workforce are so high that the second leading cause of death for that younger millennial and Gen Z is suicide. They're spending a lot of their time at work, and how can we as coworkers and leaders come alongside them and help them, especially when we're around them so much?
Wow. I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Suicide is a huge thing and people don't like to talk about it.
Yeah, that's been one of the things I've been kind of taking on the road lately. Is I recently presented a keynote on mental resilience. So it's teaching that positive psychology framework, but getting leaders to really understand. And one of the ways I've been able to kind of grasp leaders' attention is when I just show the chart straight from the CDC. What is actually killing your workforce? What is your workforce at risk of? How many of you have COVID policies still in place? And yet COVID ranks 5th for causes of death for your primary group in the workforce. Suicide is ranked 2nd. And what we're seeing, especially in the United States, is that's trending younger and younger. I mean, we have in that age range around 12 years old, second leading cause of death is suicide. We definitely have an issue with mental resiliency and mental health in the United States. And I think more people just need to be educated on it and how to approach it and what questions to ask. So I teach the Columbia Protocol. It's free. You can look it up. They'll offer free trainings on it through the website where it was created. I come in and I help teach it, but that is something that I've been very passionate and outspoken about over the last probably year and a half. Is yes, I'll still come in and do your yoga class. Yeah, we can still set up a step challenge, but what's really causing harm to your employees, and how can we focus on wellness in new ways that's going to build up that mental resiliency, build that growth mindset, and really help them to flourish?
Wow. So wait, I want to go back for a minute. So the second leading cause of death for 12-year-olds is suicide,
Yes.
and they're not even in the workforce, right?
No. So
So,
even your future workforce is struggling with this.
so I know that one of the big struggles that young people are dealing with are, the whole gender identity, sexual identity, sexual preference, and that, at least when I was in the U.S., that was a big reason for why young people committed suicide, because they just didn't feel, safe enough to express themselves. So, and what I also know from coaching, for 25 years is that a lot of the times the unresolved trauma that people have experienced, when they were younger is now being triggered at work. So let's talk about this for a moment, because I'm sure that you're encountering that as well.
Yeah.
I've coached grown ass men, who were so triggered by their superiors, and what they dealt with in their childhood was, an alcoholic mother, an alcoholic father, or or whatever, or sexual abuse or mental abuse, and there's a lot of that. So, how do you deal with that, and how do you see that playing out at work?
So I think it's raising a level of awareness. So for me, I like to come in, and so I have had work environments call me and say, "Hey, we've got people that are being triggered because, upper management or customers of the business aren't using their proper pronouns, or we're having these things come up and people are being very upset by it." And so I try to come in and I will teach certain like cognitive therapies, to end that catastrophizing. Okay, when you're triggered, how do you do it? And what's funny is we've never really been taught like what to do to de-escalate that situation. And so that's what I try to teach is, okay, somebody comes in and they're rude to you, they trigger this trauma, you can feel you're spiraling, that blood pressure is up. How do you de-escalate? Taking that step back and teaching them how to reflect. Okay, what was it that caused this? What was said? What was the situation? We even refer back to the David Rock scarf model. Which of the 5 were the areas that I was triggered in? Why was this affecting me? And then try to reappraise the situation. What were maybe they going through? So maybe it's that they didn't honestly know, like it was just a complete because I think a lot of times it is just a misunderstanding, a miscommunication. You're talking about, if somebody's, 55 years old and they've never had to use pronouns in this way before, ask these, they don't, it might just be that they honestly don't know.
Right.
And trying to de-escalate and then educate has
Right.
been kind of my approach. Now, if it is something where it's very severe and I can recognize that, like, no, this is more serious, this is a trauma response, then my immediate thing is to work with the employer to connect them with counselors. If they have an EAP, an employee assistance program, we get them that information. If they don't have that, I work to help them find resources in their area so they can get that assistance. Because, I am not a licensed therapist, and I'm very, very good about making sure I don't overstep my boundaries. I stay within my scope of work. I can recognize it. And once I recognize it, I go, okay, here. And I've done a great job in connecting with great referral partners all over the United States. So if an employer doesn't have somebody, I probably have someone in my network that I can connect them to so they can get those employees those help. But it is education. It is the de-escalation. We teach it to children when you have those feelings to name those feelings. We say you have to name it to tame it. And I feel there's a lot of adults wandering around that never learned that. And so they're being triggered and they can't even understand why. And they're just agitated and like something's gotten under their skin and they can't sleep at night. And it's because they haven't taken the time to reflect and really like put into perspective what it was specifically that triggered that stress response, that fight or flight response. And so helping them to work through that, recognize it, identify it, and then kind of reappraise the situation has been kind of my key focus.
Awesome. It's fantastic. Just right before we came on, my son came home and he was punished because he did something in school, doing Arabic language lesson that I guess he wasn't supposed to do. So his other mother came told me about it, and then he said, "Yeah, but blah 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 blah." I I bursted out because the guy next to me was, disturbing me. And it was interesting because the conversation between them then was, you didn't listen to me. So how many times are we not able to listen because we are already so triggered? So, we might be the person that got triggered because something happened, or then we might be the person that is now being triggered because somebody's saying to me, but you didn't respond. And so it's like that. It has so many dimensions and so many layers. And I am so glad that you are the one in there willing to raise awareness, because so often people they don't even want to look, they don't want to hear about it, and it's just moves straight into the you're right and you're wrong, and then it's sort of like a stalemate. I live in the Middle East, and we have a lot of that going on, and a lot of trauma, and we have an entire country that's being traumatized. And I'm not talking politics here, but it doesn't matter, what side you're on. I was talking to a friend, and they were telling me that they would talk to soldiers, and it doesn't matter whether you kill somebody, even though he's a bad guy, you still killed the person. So then still have to deal with that for the rest of your life because you took somebody else's life, even though their behavior was, atrocious, and they may have taken lives as well. So a lot of dimensions and a lot of conversations and a lot of awareness, I think, that needs to be raised. And it's good that you're doing it in the corporate environment because, people spend a lot of time there.
Yeah. And I think it's easy to, in the corporate environment, we talk about employee turnover and those kinds of things. And really what that is I tell my people that it's fight or flight in action, right?
Right.
If you leave them in the work environment, if they decide to go and work for your competitor, they've just taken flight. You've done something, you've triggered them.
Right. Yeah.
So,
right.
like, let's sit down and let's figure out what it is that's triggering them. And to your point with the not even understanding and not being able to do that complex problem solving, I love to share in one of my workshops that Lieberman and Einsberg experiment on social pain and how when somebody feels left out, it has the same response in the brain as if you're being physically harmed or physically damaged. And that you can actually, that manifests as aches and pains in the body. And, that prefrontal cortex, it does kind of shut down when we're under extreme stress or extreme pain. And then the idea to step back and solve complex problems, come up with new ideas and solutions, it's so difficult. And it affects not just the person, but it affects the company because that's going to affect productivity. And I think a lot of managers just want to push. And they bring in like ping pong tables and beanbag chairs and a yoga class. And it's like, this isn't solving the problem though. And that's where I think that my biggest frustration is. And that's what my biggest mission is, to get these companies to realize that is like putting a Band-Aid on the symptom. That's not getting to the root cause. Let's talk about the root cause and really transform these companies. But that is a hard sell because a lot of people don't know. But I think as more awareness is brought out by you doing these podcasts like this and interviewing people that I know have similar missions, I love it because I think the first step is to raise that awareness that we have to dig so much deeper.
We do. It's so true. I mean, I coach a lot of companies right now where they're laying out a third of their workforce. Hundreds of thousands of people are being laid off. And of course, like every year, you have to do more with less people. And the uncertainty that's going on in the world, people are super triggered. And I mean, there's, we know that when the fight, flight, or freeze is activated, 50% of your lateral vision goes. So, and all the other impacts that it has. So yes, everybody's listening to this. Get your company to talk about stress and wellness and triggers and trauma and all that kind of stuff. And so that you can know more about it and also get some tools that can help you as a manager, or even if you're not a manager, if you're working or you want to talk to a coworker and support somebody, that you have the tools to do it.
Absolutely.
So I think it's a good time to wrap it up. Is there something that you want to leave us with? Maybe something that you do on a daily basis in order to keep you resilient and keep going, or anything you want to share with us?
Yeah, I'm a big one on gratitude practice. If I give my clients one thing to practice daily, it is to spend just 10, 15 minutes and really journal on the things they're grateful for. I think we have just such a strong negativity bias. It's so easy for us to get thrown off kilter. And with everything going on in the world, so easy, just look at all the negative headlines.
Mhm.
Taking that 10, 15 minutes and just sit in gratefulness, think about all the things that you've been blessed with, I think can make such a huge difference, not just for you, but for everyone around you, because I do think that attitude of gratitude is contagious. And so, you practicing it, taking that first step, it definitely spreads.
Well said. Thank you so much, Megan, for spending some time with me today. It's been a pleasure. And all the information about how to get in touch with you will be in the show notes. And have a blessed day.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. Here are this episode's key takeaways. Number one, use disruption as a reset button. When life throws you off course, whether through burnout, job loss, or personal crisis, pause and ask, what is this trying to show me? Use it as a chance to realign with what truly matters to you. Number two, start a strategic movement practice. Choose a physical activity that demands both focus and discipline, not just for fitness, but to build confidence, regulate stress, and sharpen your mindset. Think boxing, martial arts, or even dance with structure and flow. Number three, interrupt negative thoughts in real time. When doubt creeps in, ask yourself, what part of this is fact and what's just fear? Reflect on times you've overcome similar challenges to ground yourself in truth and possibility. Number four, redefine what wellness means at work. If you're part of a company or team, advocate for wellness programs that go beyond surface level perks. Push for leadership development, emotional intelligence training, and mental health resources that address root causes, not just symptoms. Number five, commit to a daily gratitude check-in. Spend 10 to 15 minutes each day journaling what you're grateful for. It rewires your brain to notice the positive, counteracts stress, and elevates your emotional state, making you more resilient and grounded. Thanks for listening. That's a wrap. Have a great week. Take care.